Nintendo may be releasing a new version of the Switch.
So what can you expect?
Hot take.
As many people have been predicting, apparently we might be getting a brand new Nintendo Switch in 2019. But there's a lot of facts to take into consideration. Adam, what do we know so far?
Okay, so the Wall Street Journal had run a piece just recently about the Nintendo Switch possibly having another iteration in the second half of 2019. Now, supposedly, they had spoken to folks that had some knowledge about the upcoming device, suppliers and other people that were kind of hush-hush in the situation. And yes, there's going to be another iteration of the console, but it seems like Nintendo doesn't quite know where they're going to be heading with this future design just yet. There's some talk about a screen, and that's about all we know at this point.
Yeah. So let's just say one thing right off the top of the bat. I've been thinking about this for a while.
Yeah, I think we talked about this.
What could you do upgrading a Switch, right?
Yeah.
So first off, I firmly do not believe that we're going to be seeing an upgrade in performance. I don't think we're going to be getting a faster processor, possibly a more energy efficient chip, but I don't believe we're going to see something that is basically going to make the games run better.
Yeah.
The reason why is because that's going to increase the cost significantly, and I don't think Nintendo is in a position right now to be going, hey, here's a brand new Switch that runs games better than the last one, because that will make everyone that bought it currently feel like they got burnt.
Right, yeah, they don't want to make that separation between folks that have different types of consoles, because we did see a little bit of that with the new 3DS. There were some games that were released, very few, but like Xenoblade Chronicles was released for the new 3DS, and you couldn't play it on the old 3DS. They don't want to make like a big firm line in the sand between these two groups of people that have bought their consoles.
Yes.
So one of the main reasons that they're making this new iteration of this console is that like hardware sales have been really good for the Switch, right? I was looking into, because you know me, I'm always looking into numbers and stuff. I was looking into the first 2 fiscal years of every Nintendo console since the N64, and the Switch is up there as being like one of the best selling, because we've GameCube, N64.
Oh yeah, of course.
We've had some troublesome sort of past.
There's been a couple of moments there where
So yeah, despite how well the Switch has been selling within these 2 fiscal years, did I say quarters before? I meant years. Despite how well the system's been selling, we are starting to see a bit of a the graph's going down a little bit right now.
Yes.
So yeah, Nintendo's thinking, how can we maintain the momentum of sales for the Switch? So that's where any sort of new functionality comes in. So yes, I don't think separating user bases is the right thing to do at all.
Let's not say this in such a way that you may have misconstrued what he said as saying something like, "Oh, that means the Switch isn't selling well anymore." It's still selling great.
It is.
It's just not as
It's
selling
at 20
as
million.
great. Yeah, it's not selling as great as it was at the very beginning of everything, because it's had to gone down.
Right.
I think one of the biggest contributing factors to that is the slow release schedule for 2018.
Yes.
We really haven't seen a lot of major first-party releases or really third-party releases. We've been seeing a lot of indie games and stuff like that and ports.
We've talked about software until the cows come home. And at the end of the day, that's, we always say, it's the most important thing to a console, is that if you want people to buy your console more than anything else, you release games you want to play on the console.
Sure.
It's that simple. But I think today's conversation should be more about what we want to see, or what could possibly be a thing when it comes to this console. So you had mentioned that you would prefer something that would have a better battery life. You said performance. We might not see a huge.
I can't
jump.
imagine it. I can't imagine. Now look. Performance is on many factors.
Yes.
So right off the bat, I do not believe, like I said, you're going to see performance in terms of game quality. But by getting a much more power efficient chip, that's a good thing, right? Maybe it can have a little bit more battery life on it just because of that.
There have been complaints about battery life.
Yeah, of course.
So.
It's the Switch simply doesn't last that long out in the wild. It's fine. People have gotten used to it now. They're fine with playing like a game for about 2 hours or so.
Well, it's like 2 to 4 or whatever.
Yeah, depending on what the game is, whatever, and that's really one of the issues, right? The battery life isn't consistent across games. It really depends what game you're playing and how much energy it's taken. If you've got Wi-Fi on, if you have the screen dimmed, there's a lot of stuff that goes into that. But with that being said, there's a lot of other things they could do to make the games run a lot longer, so let's talk about a screen.
Yeah, so right off the bat in the Wall Street Journal article, they didn't, like I said, they didn't mention all that much, but they did say no OLED screen. They're not looking into that tech, so I'm going to squash that right now. Apparently that's what's happening. So
we could have had something great, folks. We had something fantastic, but okay.
Okay,
right.
well, so I have a little more info on that. So the OLED screen is still, the screens are still a bit expensive. And I have a feeling that this unit, they want it to come in probably at the same price that the Switch is at now. The old Switch model, I'm sure, will be kicked back a little bit as far as price is concerned.
Sure.
But a lot of people are saying that LCD screen technology has advanced considerably in the last couple of years, and there's even arguments that OLED screens, they boost certain colors and things too much.
I don't want to hear
I don't
that.
know.
Okay, look.
I was looking at some articles.
No. Okay, look. Let's just make this clear.
Let's make it quick.
OLED screens basically are like this. Your normal LCD screen that you have, probably what you're watching right now, maybe you have an OLED, lucky you. LCD screens basically have a screen that is lit all at once. So if you see a sequence where there's a lot of blacks, those lights, the blacks are actually lit. They're turned on.
On the OLED or LCD?
On LCD.
Oh, you're saying OLED.
Sorry. On an OLED screen, what happens is every single pixel is self-lit, which means that if you see a sequence where there's a lot of black, the blacks basically are completely black because the screen is turned off.
Right.
There are a whole bunch of different technologies that are on the market right now that change things up a little bit. Certain LCD screens out there actually have quadrants where they'll actually turn off that chunk of the screen.
Right.
But it never works.
Looks weird.
It does, right? It never looks perfect. OLED is the best. OLED is also very energy efficient because if there is nothing turned on, the screen isn't really taking any power. But you are correct. There have been some really amazing LCD screens released lately. There are a whole bunch of different kinds of technologies that go into that, whether it be IPS and stuff like that. And I definitely think that, let's be fair, OLED would be really cool in terms of battery life, in terms of a lot of that stuff. But I think there's good screens out there at that size. Because remember, right now, Nintendo isn't really talking about television stuff. They're talking about technology that we've been seeing in cell phones. And there's a whole bunch of manufacturers out there trying to make the best screens for cell phones. And that's where Nintendo's probably going to be diving into to get their screens.
Yeah, I'm sure. And we have years of...
And tablets, too.
We have years of tech history there within phones and tablets that I'm sure Nintendo can look at and see what they want exactly. So yeah, a screen is very, very important. And how that screen runs is important to battery life, right? But there are also other factors. Like, are we going to see... Like, what is this thing going to look like? It's not gonna look like the same Switch that we've had. Some people are commenting that they would like a Switch Mini per se.
Now, I think a Switch Mini would be an interesting idea. However, I don't believe you're going to see that with this. There's a lot of built-in marketing. There's a lot of branding. There's a lot of stuff that Nintendo has already done for the Switch.
The name of the console itself... It's ingrained within the marketing. Switching things, taking the controllers out, putting them back in, and hearing that click sound. It's all so important to what this console is.
If the Switch becomes smaller, there's a lot of things about that actually kind of shift things up. So your controls switch out, and that means you're going to have a secondary version of controls that work with the Switch Mini, and that would be very confusing. You need a different kind of dock. I don't think Nintendo's prepared for that. Maybe that's something that happens way off into the future, but for right now, I just don't think it's something they're going to do.
So one thing that I've seen sort of like displayed online was an all-in-one Switch that looks a little bit like a Vita, that where the controls couldn't be lifted off, and then you buy separate Joy-Con if you want to dock it and play it at home. I think that's
stupid.
I think it's kind of interesting.
Interesting, but dumb.
Yeah.
Just think about this. All the games that are being designed that are utilizing those controls as secondary.
That's what I was going to say. Okay, if you have this Vita-like device and you want to play Super Mario Odyssey.
Mario Party.
Well,
Mario Kart
but the Super Mario game you can't play unless you have like waggle controls.
Unless Nintendo were to update that game, I just can't see that happening, folks. I really don't feel that Nintendo is going to really rock the boat. They've got something good here. They've got something great with the Switch. A lot of people are getting into it. A lot of people like it. Even though there's a little bit of hidden sales right now, I firmly believe that's a software-related problem.
Yes, I believe so too.
The things they could improve, just the brightness of the screen, the battery use of the screen, a much more power-efficient chip and processor technologies, possibly a bigger battery, but a bigger internal storage.
Yeah,
that's firmly what I think you're going to see.
That's what I heard about as well.
Yeah.
I have a list of gripes that I wrote down because I've been playing my Nintendo Switch like pretty regularly recently. I just got Labyrinth of Refrain.
Yes.
So I've been playing
I saw
it
a little bit of that the other day.
I've been playing it nonstop. Okay, Adam's gripes. Number 1, the current Switch runs too hot.
Sure.
Just runs too hot, okay? Even if you're playing it undocked, if you're playing it docked and you lift it up after a few hours, it runs too hot. So whatever this next Switch is, like, I'm sure if they have a more efficient screen, that'll help out, but or a better chipset.
Hands down, thermals is actually a leading cause of energy loss because remember, the amount of energy it takes to create that heat is energy loss. So,
right, and then you have to have a fan inside as well.
Much more powerful,
Sure.
much more power efficient chip, one that runs a lot cooler, means that they could save money by basically not utilizing such a big fan, if a fan at all. Maybe they have a better technology that way.
Yeah.
Easily something they could do. Sure.
Shall I continue?
Yes.
My gripe number 2, the stand.
Oh,
okay,
that little
it's not a
kickstand?
huge. Okay, last night I was playing the game and there was a little cut scene, and I was just I'll just put it down there. I broke the stand off. You can easily stick the stand back on. Nintendo's like, yeah, okay, we're making it so that if kids mess this up,
Sure.
you can still. But the stand is not very user friendly. It's easy. It easily comes off. I know this firsthand. And I was trying to put it on my leather footrest yesterday. I was like, it just won't unless it's a solid space. It won't.
I feel, you know what? I think back when I
such
reviewed,
a small thing, but I think they could really fix that in the next iteration of the console.
I think when I reviewed the Switch originally, when it first came out, I mentioned that the stand wasn't all that great. I feel that all they really need to do to make this the stand better is, first off, when the thing comes out, it needs to be able to pop off easily, and there's a reason.
Well, it does pop off easily, Shane.
But you know why? Because if that's ever out and somebody puts it in the dock,
Yeah.
it will break the dock or break the Switch.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
that's why it has to pop off.
Right.
But that doesn't mean they can't make a Switch stand that has several different
I want
angles.
like a U design, kind of like a picture frame kind of thing.
Something like that holds it. Sure, why not?
It's just more stable that way. It can still pop off.
Something simple, but honestly, something that has a little bit of different steps to it, so that you can arrange what kind of size. Because there's been some instances where I've just wanted it to be on the table, but not flat, just kind of like at a bit of an angle.
Yeah.
And you can't do that. So if they were to do something like that, I think it'd be a big plus. I think a lot of folks would just get a Switch just because of that.
Another gripe that I've had that we noticed first in the office, and then I noticed it while I was at home, is that the rumble's really loud.
Yeah.
If the volume is up relatively or is down relatively low, and your rumble's going, we were like, oh, maybe it's just our office Switch. Maybe something happened there. But I was playing it last night, and I was like, no, the rumble's legit loud in this thing. Like, I would love for. I don't know how they can manage that, but
to be honest, I would hope that the next generation of the Switch and maybe the new Joy-Cons use more metal pieces, because I feel that loudness from the rumble that we're hearing is actually from the pieces inside the controller getting a little loose.
Yeah,
that's what it feels. The controllers don't feel as snappy and as strong as they were when I originally tried them. So it feels like we're just starting to see this happen. I had issues with the Switch controllers originally, and I had to send them back, or one of them back.
Yes.
So when that one was being sent back,
that was
I got a new
disconnect issue.
Yeah.
People had?
And they fixed the disconnect issue, but now that I've got them back, it wasn't as loose then, but now it feels a little bit more loose. So I'm thinking that the more you use the controller, that goes with any controller. The more you use it, the more loose it's going to feel.
Yeah, we've had problems with PS4 controllers and Xbox controllers. This isn't like a Nintendo thing specifically, but especially with a device.
Yeah, for the Switch, it's very specific.
Where you're constantly, you could be constantly removing these and placing them back in. Maybe some people aren't.
It's basically, there is the Switch controllers, the Joy-Cons are much smaller, and the vibration motor in it is big enough that it basically takes up a majority of that controller internally. So just think of it that way, folks. An Xbox One controller, a PlayStation 4 controller is mostly controller, not mostly motors. So that's kind of a thing. And those older motors, vibration motors you're using in those controllers, they've been using for years. What they're using in the Switch controller is not the same kind of technology. So it's a little bit different. And I think
HD.
Yeah, HD. It's another thing. But yeah.
I'm in complete agreement with you. And one of my other gripes was that, it feels, the Switch feels good. I feel like it's one of the better feeling pieces of tech that Nintendo's released in a long time. But there is a little bit of
there's play.
Thank you. Yeah. There's some play to it, and I've noticed that my left controller isn't as flush as my right controller, and I just feel like it could be designed a little bit better in that perspective.
It does feel like, it doesn't feel like the thing's breaking by any means, but it does feel like it's getting much more loose, and it's something that I am very aware of.
One thing
that
I want to see, all right, if they do wind up like whatever, if it's a good idea or a bad idea, if they do wind up going with a Vita-like design, give us a D-pad.
Never going to happen.
Give us a D-pad.
Actually, you know what? Okay.
Give us a D-pad.
If there is.
Please give us a D-pad.
If for whatever reason this happens, okay, and we do get a Switch that you can't take the controllers off left and right.
Give us a D-pad?
Yeah. The reason why is because at that point you remove the functionality of the controllers being used as secondary controllers.
I still think they should release Joy-Con that have a D-pad on them. If you're playing your classic games, if you're
Corey has one, so there are third-party options.
That's true.
But you
There's
don't see it from
third-party.
Nintendo directly.
I want to see a first-party option. Is all I'm saying. Yeah, you're right. You're right. Okay. So yeah, is there anything else that a gripe that gets to you, or anything else that you'd like to see in another iteration of the Switch?
You know, to be honest, the things that I've wanted to see the most are really just the file size limitation.
Yeah.
I want more storage. That's what I really want.
I mean, it's not that expensive at this point, right?
Yep.
We could have 256 gigs or something in there, and I don't think it would be very costly. If they do wind up doing more than just storage and do something with like a more powerful chipset or more memory or something, I would love to see it integrated in such a way that it's not necessarily like how they treated the 3DS, new 3DS with the games and stuff. I want it more like the PS4 Pro or the Xbox One X, where every game is fine, but some games you can maybe play with at a higher resolution, or they have better textures. If they could integrate that in, that would be pretty cool.
One of the reasons I don't want them to do that is because the moment you introduce another kind of format for them to be making games on, then suddenly what you're getting is developers making, okay, now you're making a portable version, a cheap Switch version, and an expensive Switch version, and maybe the portable version of that one has a difference too. You're creating multiple variations of a game, and that's when you start to get into a lot of problems.
But if it's as simple as like anti-aliasing or something, and it isn't necessarily like bigger textures, if it is more or less a few days work, or like the flick of a switch, I think that'd be cool.
It may be, but I just don't think it's a smart move. I think that what they've got here, they need to focus on it, because no matter what they do to this Switch, no matter what this next version is, even if it is a more powerful chipset, it simply is not going to match what the PlayStation 4 is or what the Xbox One is, so I don't believe it's wise for them to do that. Just having a small step upgrade that just has a better flash memory, maybe 2 SD card slots, whatever, something like that, right? Just the basic stuff to keep gamers going and, refresh the lineup just a little bit. By the time they go to make a larger upgrade that is more powerful, then they could probably, by that point, in like, let's say 3 or 4 years time.
So you're saying their next console, not necessarily the next iteration?
Let's just call it the Switch 2, whatever.
Yeah.
By that point, they can make a system that is comparable to the current platforms out there, and maybe even surpasses them a little bit. That's the smart move. But doing anything before that point, it's gonna confuse the consumer base right now. It's gonna be a mistake all around, and I don't think it's gonna be a smart move.
I disagree. I feel like if they do integrate a more powerful chipset or something, it could be something as simple as like, oh hey, you want to play this game in 30 frames per second or 60 frames per second, and if it's not an online game or something, it could just be something really cool that could help the gameplay for someone that wanted to get the pro version of the console.
Maybe, but folks, what do you think? Do you agree with Adam and believe that a higher frame rate chipset,
I don't know. I just say words. I don't think.
A better chipset that is more powerful, or a Switch that has a couple of additional features but doesn't really rock the boat? What do you think is a better idea, and what ideas do you think the Switch should have that we haven't mentioned here? Let us know what you think in the comments below.